AM 590, KXSP Omaha's ESPN Radio. It's time for the Front Stretch, brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com.
Well, good morning. This is the Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. Booking prices, everything you could possibly need except for the fun and experience of what it's like to drive one of the karts. It's all available online, joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Get your event booked today. I know that corporate outings, bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, who are harder on karts, guys or girls?
Women,
I gotta say.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say women are too slow. Oh, I'm going to get beat up for this. Women could possibly be a danger because they're slow, so then the guys wreck into them on purpose.
Well, what happened is Kara, Andrew's girlfriend, came in and was going too slow. She got freaked out when Andrew came flying by her and put her in the wall, so, it was a little rough right there, but typically what we tend to see, there's no such thing as a real bad driver, I want to say, but the bachelorette parties, let's just say those are entertaining to see the least. The bachelorette parties the bachelor parties aren't too bad, but we get a lot of those.
So get your booking, your prices, your hours, everything online, joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. You can also give Bud a call today, 712-256-5278. You can call Bailey or Ryan, or all of you guys are willing to answer the phones. And listen to me, I got to tell you, we've been pubbing this all season long, all year long. I am a huge fan of Joe's Karting. I took a long little span there where I didn't make it in, and my cousin got back from his foreign exchange in Germany, and we went and did a couple of races, and then my best friend got back in town, and we went and did a couple of races, and I've got it back in my system. I absolutely love that place. I had so much fun.
I was actually impressed the last time you were in. Instead of getting lapped 2 times, you only got lapped 1 time.
I'm getting better.
You're down. We've been talking all season. You're right around 28 seconds a lap. You're down to 26 now, so huge improvement.
Listen, much like Danica Patrick, I'm here to learn, and I'm just here to complete races.
You ain't as good as looking as Danica Patrick, though.
Not at all. Well, thank you again for joining us on the Front Stretch, and guys, bravo. We are here for another week. You did not get us canceled or fined, so I applaud you while I was recovering in my bunk at Lake Icaria, in over by Corning, while it was raining all weekend long. You guys held down the show, and I got to say thank you for not ruining my baby.
And I want to say, we're glad to see you back so we can rock this show here on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
It only took all year long. It only took you to get that right. So way to go. So thank you guys, and thank you so much for joining us again this morning. It's a beautiful Sunday morning in the Midwest, and dirt track racing went on last night and the night before. We had some stuff that I believe it was at Eagle that ended up that ended their points series on Saturday night.
Saturday night, that would have been a Saturday from a week prior to last night. Rained out, real close points. If you go back onto YouTube for the Sling and Dirt, you'll hear Tom Grasso and Stan Caesar break down the points, give a little bit of history. They'll be talking, or they are talking about who was doing what, who did this, who did that, how many people did Bud hit, how many times I spun out, stuff like that.
And you can find Sling and Dirt, which is our all-dirt track talk segment, where we talk dirt for about 35-40 minutes. We break down points. We talk about all that stuff. You can find it on the Joe's Karting Facebook page. It's the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting. Just search for that in the title bar, become a fan of it, and we posted it there. You can also become a subscriber to the Joe's Karting YouTube page and get updates whenever we post this show and Sling and Dirt. So let's talk about Front Stretch. We got a lot to talk about today, even though we haven't had any racing since the last time you guys were on. It's been a while since I've got to talk racing, so I got a lot to say. And in turn 4, we're going to talk with Andrew Koziski for the Infield Report presented by Koziski Auto Parts. In turn 3, we're going to talk with Erik Darnell. Bud and I, we were able to sit down with him Tuesday night and talk about his time this year in the number 40, the Motorsports Group Nationwide car. And great guy, great driver. We had a great conversation with him, and I was going back and editing the interview down later in the week, and he was so on pace with everything. There wasn't much I could edit out to make it sound a little bit better. I mean, he was so fluid, so great, and I can't wait. I would love to do more interviews with him, so hopefully he has a great career. So you'll be able to hear all of that in turn 3. In turn 2, the Fast 5. It's the 5 stories that are dominating the NASCAR world, and we got some doozies this week, some contract announcements, some fights as they went down at Bristol, some updates on those, and we may have an announcement for where Matt Kenseth is going, an official announcement. So, buddy, you did not predict he would go somewhere wrong. So congratulations on that.
Good job,
also,
bud.
In turn 4, I think we finally need to nail this down. At the beginning of the season, we had a big bet that Kurt Busch would make the chase, and we've let that die down a little bit because we want to make sure that he is eliminated. Well, he is effectively eliminated from the chase. He cannot make the chase anymore. And the bet was that if Kurt Busch in that 51 Phoenix racing car did not make the chase, that Buddy would race around Joe's Karting in a pink tutu.
In a tub.
In a bathtub, correct. And I want to up the ante a little bit. I think we need to do this on the holiday horsepower day.
No.
Yeah, I think we do. I think we need to do this on the holiday horsepower drive, but we'll get into that in a turn 4, and we'll get this debate going. We're already 5 minutes into it, and we haven't even got to talk dirt track, so we kind of called a little bit of an audible. What do you guys want to talk about? Boone Nationals coming up next weekend, or do you want to talk some specials for dirt track coming up locally?
What do we got locally? We got the Fall Brawl coming up at I-80.
The Fall Brawl is coming up in 2 weeks. That's the big sprint car show, probably one of the biggest that Nebraska's going to have this year. I think it's going to be great. They're going to try to make it like the Silver Dollar was for sprint cars, so it's going to be pretty cool.
And if I looked on the website right, that's the Midwest ASCS Series Championship, correct?
Correct. And so there's going to be a lot of guys that aren't in it as well, but it's going to be, I bet you, 50, 60 sprints, I'd bet.
We talked to Stu Snyder last weekend on the front stretch, and he talked about how, he's currently leading in the Midwest division, but because because of his health conditions and not able to get back into the race car, he's going to fall out of the top spot. So it comes down to Jack Dover. There's Trevor Grossenbacher's up there. I think
Jack
he's in
Dover,
5th.
Mike Boston, I believe, is
Brian Brown's going to be there. I mean, we got some big names coming. I mean, what do we have there? Heidenschild might even show up again. Lee Gardner will be there. I can't name all the guys that are going to be there yet because you never know.
I think between the hard charger, winning the feature, and something else, I think there's a total possibility that you could, in theory, end up winning $7,000, and that's a huge payday on dirt. September 9th. Eagle Raceway, you got the Nebraska Cup. That's coming down the pipeline. That's going to be really, really huge. World of Outlaws, Eagle Raceway. That's coming down here in a month.
The makeup show is coming up, and I believe that is Wednesday. That's a Wednesday. Now, typically, we're used to dirt tracks not really running around here on Wednesdays, but that is going to be a Wednesday event, and that's the makeup for World of Outlaws. So you're going to see guys like Steve Kinzer. You're going to see guys like who we talked to, the crowd pleaser. Craig Delansky's going to be there. We're going to see some great guys down at Eagle and run the high banks at Eagle Raceway, and that's going to be the makeup race for what they had planned. I believe that was in April. April or May that they'd had that planned, but oddly enough, it got rained out, and I think that was the last time it rained, other than last weekend, while I was sitting at a lake trying to enjoy a campfire and some fishing, but instead I sat inside of a cabin with no radio, no TV, and hardly any electricity. But I'm not bitter at all about
September 15th, we got the Tiny Lund coming. We got McCool Junction. They got the McCool 100 coming in October.
That's likely later in October, I think it is.
Yeah, and then the Classic, which we already talked about, that's going to be in October. So, but now Dan wouldn't know this, but Andrew, as a driver, we could race week in and week out for weekly points, but these specials, these are huge for us. Some of these specials, when you win these are career makers. I mean, when you put you won the Cornhusker Classic on your resume, that's huge for a driver.
And I mean, not only is that, this is the most fun I think I have out of the year. I think I have every week planned all the way until almost the end of November. And then once I get into that, really almost to Christmas, I have planned of a race every single weekend I'm going to. And every single weekend, it's a party. It's awesome.
I was going to say, how many of these following weekends all the way up through the beginning of the year are going to be consumed with adult beverages?
Oh, plenty. It's going to start with the fall. Well, probably Eagle first. I mean, this is the last week I-80 has for me at points on Sunday, or tonight. And since nobody has work tomorrow, we can hang out tonight, start next week, the week after that, the week after that. I mean, it just
you're going to drink a lot of Dr. Pepper. Mm-hmm. You're going to drink a lot of Coke.
A little Kool-Aid. Some Jungle Juice, Jeremiah Wheat. I want to bring up the fact that I have a recipe for you guys. You got to try this.
No, you're going to make it and you're going to bring it.
Okay,
yeah, you're going to make it and you're going to bring it. Hey, are we going to have this on record? You are coming to the specials.
Which ones? There's some of them unavailable for because I've got previous
He's got to be at the Cornhusker for sure.
At the Classic.
Yes, I will be at the Cornhusker.
October 14th.
I-80 Speedway is a client of mine in my real life, so as I have to show up with my company credit card in hand and fully write that baby off. So I will be because the client. I got to be there with my client, right?
Well, if you got to write it off, are you going to bring alcohol with you?
You're going to just buy a keg for us? Or?
I think so. Oh, maybe we'll put that on my.
Whoa! publicly, you just said you're buying a keg?
I am not buying a keg. We're running out of time, we're running out of time here. I got to wrap this baby up.
I need some beer.
No way in hell am I paying for that guy. He would run me dry. He would run me. I've got pretty good credit line, but not that good to run with Chad Sanders. Also talk about it. You're going to the Boone Nationals. We're working on the Boone Super Nationals.
Oh, yep.
You're going to that, and that's
the biggest race
weekend, correct?
Yep. All these specials coming up. This is, these are huge specials, but the Super Nationals, this is something I've never gotten to do. It's a spectacle. I'm going to try it one time.
Maybe that's what we'll do for Turn 3. That will be our interview segment for Turn 3 next weekend. We'll get you an update. We'll get an update of how the Super Nationals are going.
I can call in or something.
Yeah, but we're going to be live. Hell, we're going to be live. So you're going to get up with us, right?
No.
I think you should.
I think you're gonna.
I think we're going to need some dedication out of you.
You called me at 2 a.m. last week.
We're going to need some dedication out of you, bud. This has been Turn 1, presented by Joe's Karting on Omaha's ESPN Radio. Make sure you get to joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Get your booking, prices, and hours all online. joeskartingwithak.com. Or call 712-256-5278. This is The Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is The Front Stretch on AM 590, brought to you by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome back to The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. This is the Fast Five stories that are dominating the NASCAR world. The silly season, guys, it seems, is in full gear, and there has been rumors and innuendos that Tony Stewart will not necessarily fire, but dismiss Steve Addington as his crew chief at the end of 2013, and instead he will replace him with Greg Zipadelli. But as Tony Stewart was sitting at Charlotte Motor Speedway this week doing a promotion for Mobil 1, his primary sponsor, he says that is completely untrue. Tony says, quote, "No, that is not true. This is the first I have heard about it." Imagine that the guy wins the championship at the end of 2011 and fires his crew chief, brings over a very respected Steve Addington crew chief. Midway through the offseason, so about 2 weeks into the offseason, he ends up hiring his old crew chief, Greg Zipadelli. I don't know. Who do you go with? Greg Zipadelli, who has won you 2 championships? Or do you go with Steve Addington, who hasn't won a championship, but he's definitely won?
No, I think him and Zippy have been around long enough. They go almost 10 years together? Was it 10 years they went together?
Yeah, it was 10 years.
I think they're too close, and I really think that they're going to be a good team together. I really like if Zippy does get the job. I really hope, because Tony's going to be fast.
But here's the thing I want to bring up, and the fact that I know that there was 2 or 3 different occasions. I'm not like one of these big-time NASCAR guys that can sit there and spout off exactly what race and exactly what situation, but I know there was 2 or 3 years in a row while the last few years that Tony and Greg were together, that there was a decision made by Greg on top of the pit box that cost Tony a race and ended up costing him the championship or getting into the chase. And I think there was some extreme frustration. I think that's the reason why Tony didn't even try to bring Greg with him when he came over and created Stewart-Haas Racing. I don't think this is going to happen. I think Greg Zipadelli is going to stay as the car chief for Stewart-Haas Racing. I think he's going to stay in the administrative role and plan bigger picture stuff. But it's interesting to see that this stuff's kind of popping up.
I think this is just a case of naysayers just kind of putting a bug in different reporters' ears and getting the rumor mill started. So, I don't see it happening myself.
Yeah, I don't either. But it will, only time will tell. I mean, I don't think any of us at the beginning of the season would have said that Matt Kenseth would be leaving Roush Fenway.
No.
I don't think any of us would have ever said that. And I don't think any of us would have said that Michael Waltrip Racing would be doing as good as they are. So only time will tell. So what's number 2, bud?
Number 2, Joe Gibbs Racing to announce Kenseth is signing this week. Joe Gibbs Racing plans to announce on Tuesday, September 4th, that Matt Kenseth will be its newest driver beginning in 2013. Oh, shocker. Not.
Yeah, nobody's surprised at that.
The 03 Sprint Cup champion will take over the number 20 team driven by Joey Logano with Home Depot as his primary primary sponsor. JGR President J.D. Gibbs said last Saturday at Bristol Motor Speedway he has still held out hope of re-signing Logano and adding a fourth team if sponsorship can be found. Logano is not expected to be a part of Tuesday's press conference. Logano also is a candidate for the number 22 Cup team at Penske Racing, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But he recently said he was not interested in being having a part-time Cup ride in a full-time Nationwide series, which is one of the options at JGR. He was okay with that until another opportunity came up. Gibbs said of Logano. I personally think that this is a great move. Kenseth going in, and we've talked about this. Home Depot. Or not Lowe's. Jimmy Johnson in that 48 with a Lowe's car. As a sponsorship, you said it best. How many times is Home Depot going to watch their competition kick their butt on the track every week with that kind of a market share and exposure? Now, you know what? I want to go back to the first thing that we were talking about with Stewart. Back then, Joe Gibbs Racing. Now they're announcing Kenseth. If you remember back then, they were just being kind of hush-hush. We don't really know what they're talking about, stuff like this. So I would be keeping an eye on that Stewart story.
But the thing is that when they came out, when they said, is Matt Kenseth going to be your driver, they were contractually obligated to not say anything, neither confirm nor deny. And so they said, we cannot make that announcement at the time. They never said yes or no. Tony flat out came out and said no. Yeah, that is not true.
Andrew, do you see where I'm coming with that statement? If I'm Tony Stewart, why would I even, why disrupt the masses right now at Stewart-Haas Racing? So if I sit there and say, you know what, look, that's absolutely false. This is the first time I heard about it, and then here in the next 3 months, we're going to be on the front stretch going, hey, guess who the new crew chief is?
Well, let's go back to this time last year when there was rumors swirling that Darian Grubb would not be the crew chief for the 14 anymore. Tony never said, I know he's going to be the crew chief. He's going to be the crew chief. Tony never said that. Tony said, we are currently working on a contract. It was always not yes, but not no. Listen to the verbiage that's coming out when they're talking about Ryan Newman. We want to sign Ryan as long as we can make it financially viable. They have not done that yet. He leaves himself open to say, I never said yes or no. This statement, he doesn't leave himself open. He says flat out, no, that is not true.
Well, it's early enough in the season.
And the question was, is Greg Zipadelli going to be the crew chief for the 14 in 2013? Tony said, no, that is not true. Doesn't mean it's not true for 2014, 2015, down the road. But I don't think you make the change for a crew chief after just one season.
Well, if we keep talking Stewart, he's going to be throwing something at us. So,
well, we're going to go back kind of with the. Penske confirms that Logano is a candidate for driving the number 22 in 2013. The owner of Penske Racing acknowledged on Saturday that Joey Logano is a candidate to drive the number 22. Roger Penske also didn't rule out expanding from 2 to 3 cars and including Sam Hornish Jr., who has been in the number 22 since Allmendinger was suspended and released for violating NASCAR's rules. Penske said he hoped to have a decision by September 16th, Chase opener at Chicagoland. Sources close to the situation, said Logano, who was in the final year of his contract with Joe Gibbs Racing. Logano is the front runner for the number 22 spot. Logano says he's obviously a candidate, but there's other good people too. That people haven't talked about. Penske said before the Sprint Cup race at Bristol Motor Speedway, we have a couple of rabbits. Penske would not expand on other potential candidates. Penske didn't rule out that Alliance Truck Parts, which sponsor Hornish's Nationwide car, could move up to Cup in 2013.
And this is something I want to bring up in the next story that I'm going to talk about. That 22 may be losing Shell Pennzoil as their primary sponsor.
I think they need to get rid of the car. It's been problems for 2 years now.
Yeah, it has been. Here's the thing, though, is that Penske confirmed, yeah, we're talking to Logano. And it kind of seems, when you start to, string out some strings here a little bit and try to connect some dots, it seems pretty obvious that Joey Logano is going to be driving that 22 car. But
I hate that.
Okay, here's the thing.
I like it.
I don't. I think the talent that you've got out there, I want to throw out one name that I think is more deserving that 22 ride than Joey Logano is. Brian Vickers.
Okay.
No.
Brian Vickers, because he has gone to Michael Waltrip Racing, and he has raced, I believe, 5 times this year, maybe 4 times.
I think top 10 about every time.
Just about every time. The only time he hasn't is when they've had a mechanical failure and he's gotten into an accident. Otherwise, it has been a top 5. Joey Logano has had quality parts at Joe Gibbs Racing, and I go back to the fact that despite that he is a talented driver and he's winning his butt off down at the Nationwide Series, he's not doing it on the Cup Series. And you go back and look at Brian Vickers in 2011, he had Red Bull Racing. So did Casey Kane. Casey Kane won once. Brian Vickers sat in the back. I mean, it was inferior equipment. I think Joey Logano has had his chance at Joe Gibbs Racing, and he has done not much with it. I think Brian Vickers deserves a shot in that 22 with quality racing parts of Penske.
I think that eventually Michael Waltrip is going to see the same and give him a full-time ride. So he's sharing it with with Mark Martin.
Mark Martin and Michael, I believe. I think Michael's racing.
Is Michael running it?
I think Michael ran Daytona, and he'll race Talladega.
And I think Waltrip's going to click the light on and say, Vickers, we're going to give you a full-time ride. Because pretty soon Mark Martin's not going to be around. And
we've been saying that since he did his retirement tour,
20 years ago?
Yeah. And the thing is, the guy is still competitive. So
he's good.
How do you sit there and say, I need to move Mark Martin out of the car when he has done a great job in that 55?
Add 4 cars.
I guess so. You just add another car to the mix.
With this whole Penske thing, the reason why Brian Vickers deserving of a ride, absolutely. The reason why I say no, because if I'm Sam Hornish Jr. right now, I'm going to be fired up because I'm your relief driver. I've been with the organization for a lot of years. He's an accomplished driver. Has he won everything? No. But has he actually had a legitimate full ride? Show us what you got. Give us a 2-3 year run, a chance to really prove himself.
He has had that. Not Penske.
Hornish isn't even Hornish isn't even on my list. I wouldn't even have him on there. I got Vickers, Regan Smith, David Reagan.
Hornish needs to be in that Penske card.
I don't think he needs to be up in the Cup Series, though. I think he needs to sit down in the Nationwide for a few more years. I think he's just like Danica Patrick. I think they're putting her up in the Cup too soon.
Way too soon.
I think they're, I understand why they're putting her up in the Cup because
she looks good.
She's got the money behind her. You don't turn away money.
True.
I mean, for Pete's sake, that's ridiculous. Sam Hornish doesn't have the money behind him. I don't think he needs to be in that 22. I think he's better suited sitting down. So they essentially
fire Hornish to bring Logano. No. Hear me out. So they theoretically fire Hornish. Go, okay, we're going to give Logano or Vickers or whoever the ride in the 22. But you know what? If they abuse a drug policy or if they crash or if they get sick, we want you to be our fill-in. Well, how many times are you going to want to be that fill-in guy when evidently if they didn't think that he could handle it, they wouldn't have him even as a fill-in driver?
They didn't have a choice.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm not talking bad about Sam Hornish Jr., but they found out at 11 o'clock on race day. They were going green flag racing in, 5-6 hours? Who did they have? Who could they go and get that is a licensed NASCAR driver that had experience at the track that day? They went with somebody who's in their organization already, and they went with Sam Hornish Jr., and they said, Sam, please drive the car for the rest of the year.
Been the go-to guy to get him out of a sling. Stay with the guy.
I think Penske's the kind of guy that will think about that. He'll definitely take that into consideration, but he's also got sponsorship issues with Pennzoil that is unhappy with the results of that car for the last 2-3 years, and they were unhappy with Kurt Busch driving it. They were unhappy with AJ Allmendinger driving it. I don't think it's necessarily that they're unhappy with Sam Hornish driving it, but they just haven't had time to decide. He needs to put somebody in that car that can start winning right away. I think Brian Vickers is it. I think Sam Hornish just isn't ready. I think he deserves it, but he's just not ready. We're into 12 minutes already, so we got to wrap this baby up pretty quickly. I'm going to call an audible. Before we were going to talk about Tony Stewart not being penalized for his actions at Bristol. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later because I'm a little fired up about some of the opinions I've heard this week. And instead, we're going to talk about that Shell Pennzoil sponsorship. That there was an update Wednesday afternoon from Carl Edwards stating that he has not been approached by Shell Pennzoil about sponsoring the 99. Or, this was interesting, there is rumors that there was a part in his contract that said if he missed the chase in 2012, he could opt out of his contract with Roush Fenway and sign with another team. Carl has flat out come out and said that is untrue. Regardless of if that is in my contract or not, I will be driving the number 99 Fastenal Ford next year for Roush Fenway. I am not exploring the option of the 22 car. If asked if Shell Pennzoil will be coming over and joining the 99, he said, I am not privy to that information. I do not know. I can't tell you either way. This is really interesting that another organization is joining the Ford team, and they could be losing one of their primary sponsors because of the Ford connection. What did you guys talk about that last weekend? Did you guys get a chance to talk about it?
Well, Andrew did an audible and redid the Fast Five, but
yeah.
Either way, but I think that's fascinating that I was under the assumption that when Shell Pennzoil signed with an organization, they were with that organization, not that manufacturer.
Well, yeah, that's like kind of when you said they're going to go with Ford. That doesn't make no sense to me at all.
But here's another example of a guy who sits there and says during a rain delay that he's hungry for a Subway sub, or he does everything to promote for his. He's got sponsorship coming out the ears, and there's guys that can't find a lick.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me as to why a potential sponsor would want to stay with just a specific automobile brand. They just want to stay with a driver or an organization. Number 5 on the Fast Five, Truex confirms he re-signs with MWR. Martin Truex has agreed to an extension to stay in the number 56 Toyota for Michael Waltrip Racing with Napa Know-How as his primary sponsor. MWR has scheduled a press conference for Friday at Atlanta Motor Speedway where Truex and NASCAR President Mike Helton will be present to announce 2013 plans and unveil a car.
Know-how. I love those commercials. I'm sorry, they're so stupid, but I love those commercials. And great for Michael or Martin, because he deserves to be in a good organization and a good ride, and that organization has definitely turned around.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think that is.
Have you really noticed that Truex has really matured a lot as a driver though? In the last 2 years?
He has.
He seems like he's having so much fun. He looks like the typical 25, 26-year-old young man who's living a rock star lifestyle, loving every minute of it, and he's running good.
It's
he
awesome
makes it fun.
The flagman's giving us a signal of halfway done, so we got to wrap her up. Turn 3 is just around the corner. We're going to talk with the number 40 driver for the Motorsports Group in the Nationwide Series, Erik Darnell. Don't go anywhere. You're going to want to hear that. This is the Front Stretch on AM 590 Omaha's ESPN Radio.
You're listening to The Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. Brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome back to The Front Stretch. This is Turn 3 on The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, located on 23rd Ave next to AMC Theaters and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Get to Joe's today. Get yourself some fast-paced white-knuckle racing where the only speed restriction is how fast you are. Talking with Erik Darnell, NASCAR driver in the Camp and Roll Truck Series, Nationwide Series, and you've even had a couple of Sprint Cup Series. Erik, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I know that you got your start driving karts. Have you ever been up into the Council Bluffs area before and had an opportunity to go to Joe's?
I actually have not, but I would not be opposed to it. I'll tell you that much. If I'm in the area, I'd definitely like to try it.
I tell you what, we've got the operations manager, my co-host Buddy Ray here. I'm pretty sure Buddy will extend an offer of some free races for you if you wanted to come over sometime.
Absolutely, and Dan, you've got nothing for Erik. I've seen the guy drive. You've got nothing for this guy.
Erik, we've got a little bit of history with you. Joe's Karting does for all the listeners. When you guys were at the Nationwide race in Iowa Speedway, not the last one, but the first one you guys came to at Iowa in Newton, Holiday Horsepower was one of the sponsors, correct, Bud?
Yep, the Holiday Horsepower Drive-In, Joe's Karting, we're on each side, and to us that was a huge honor to meet Erik and to watch him, represent us and for us to represent him, and ever since then we've become a big fan and a big supporter of Erik. I know when the NASCAR races are on TV, you can pretty much hear a pin drop inside Joe's because we're wanting to see what Erik's doing out there on the track.
So, Erik, let's get a little started with just the easiest stuff. I know your grandfather is a former USAC driver. Did you ever get into USAC, or did you go right from karts to up into the Cup Series?
Well, the USAC stuff was kind of the equivalent of, they were almost in the level of NASCAR back in the 60s and 70s. They ran all the big tracks and stuff, and that kind of fizzled out the series that he ran. But as far as USAC series of today, like the open wheel stuff, I never really did any of that. But I advanced from go-karts to four-cylinder cars to asphalt late models, but never did any of the USAC stuff. No.
What was it like stepping up from series to series, going from your karts to what you stepped up to? What's the learning curve like when you step up in those series?
Well, for me, I like I said, I was pretty fortunate to almost have a gradual progression to go from the karts to I ran in the Allison Legacy cars, which those were kind of big down in the Southeast, and they had some series up in the Pennsylvania region, then some Midwest stuff, and I got into those a little bit after the karts and ran those for, 2 or 3 years. But there's little four-cylinder cars, just kind of teach you how to drive with a little bit of horsepower, how to be smooth, and I feel like that really helped me make the transition into the asphalt late model stuff a lot easier. I know there's some kids nowadays going from, quarter midget go-kart stuff right into the late models, and some of them are successful, some of them are not, but I was glad I had that little bit of experience before I just jumped into the size car.
For those of out there listening, we're talking to Erik Darnell, driver in the number 40 Nationwide Series car. Back in the day, I don't know if Roush still does this, but Roush Racing had the Driver X program. It was a national, it was like a reality competition TV show. Talk to us, what was it like, being on national TV, vying for a cup car that most of us, can only dream about getting to drive?
Well, for me, I was very fortunate to be a part of that whole deal. At the time, that's when there were still sponsorship dollars going around. Teams were still doing the driver development programs where they could bring in some young guys and spend a little bit of money on them in, ARCA and trucks, whatever they were using it for. And I was fortunate enough to just kind of out of the blue get a phone call to come down and be a part of the tryout program. And there were 25 of us that got the opportunity to do that, and I was the fortunate one to kind of win the whole deal. But honestly, when you're out there driving the car and we had to do some media portions and some other things with it, you really don't notice the cameras that much. You're just kind of out there doing what you know how to do, but they were filming it. So we got to kind of see the end result later on, but you didn't really notice that part when we were doing it. But again, very fortunate to be part of that deal and got a Truck Series ride, and that's how I kind of broke into the NASCAR side of things.
Now, you got into the sport when the economy was starting to take its turn, and at that time, NASCAR and any of the series really kind of took a big the sport kind of mutated towards, I think, a little less talent-based and more sponsor-based. It's come down to the fact that you've got to not only be damn good behind the wheel, but you got to have some money behind you when come into the sport. Talk a little bit about, do you think that's hurt the sport and hurt some of these upcoming drivers and made their window of opportunity less?
Well, to be honest with you, yes. I know myself of some very talented younger drivers who don't have any sponsorship money behind them right now, and they might never get that opportunity to go out there and run on the NASCAR side. But it's a business. It's expensive to run these things. I've kind of seen that firsthand this year working with Curtis Key over here at the Motorsports Group with this 40 car that I'm running right now. Coming from a place like Roush, they've got the resources and the money and everything to be able to run everything right. Coming over here to a smaller team like this, Curtis has really got to kind of pinch the pennies and kind of decide what we spend money on as far as getting the cars out there, and it's expensive to do. So if there's a younger driver that comes in that's got money, they're more than likely going to take him over somebody who maybe has done better in their respective divisions, whether it's late models or midgets or whatever it is, but they don't have the sponsorship dollars behind them. It's expensive to do this stuff, and it's frustrating, to think that there might be a really good driver out there who's not going to get an opportunity because of that, but that's kind of just the way it's become. And I was fortunate enough to get in it in 2005, 2006, when there was still a little bit of sponsorship money, and I didn't have to bring anything with me. And I probably wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now.
Last weekend, Erik, you were able to complete 173 laps before electrical issues ended your day, and I believe you're running inside the top 10 there at Bristol. Can you kind of tell us what the new and the old Bristol was like after last weekend?
Define new and old. I got to race on it. I got to race on it in the early 2000s in a late model, and then my first year in the truck, I got to race it before they did the whole concrete deal, or when they repaved the track or redid the track in 2007. So between 2006 and 2007, that was a huge difference. But honestly, between the couple races, or I guess the spring race and the fall race, when they resurfaced the top of the track, it really wasn't a whole lot of different. It kind of narrowed the groove up a little bit, and it was definitely a little slick if you got up high. But I know you guys watched the Cup race. Them guys kept inching up there, and the track kept taking rubber, and it basically got to be this almost the same track, I feel anyway, like we had in the spring. But it was just weird. It's almost to the point now where it's kind of like the old Bristol, where you have one line of racing for the most part, except instead of being on the bottom, now it's on the top of the track. So
If
it was interesting, but it was fun.
If Bruton Smith was to come to you and say, what do I need to do with my track to continue this, to try to continue making it more interesting again, would you have a suggestion for him?
Not really, and I think I don't know that I'm in the minority or not, but I feel like the driver, we had been racing at for the last 3 or 4 years, just because there were a couple lanes and it gave you opportunities to actually wreck them. Now, obviously, the fans got used to the older Bristol where it was one groove of racing, and you definitely kind of had to knock somebody out of the way to get by them, and I think it's kind of lacking excitement a little bit. But, I mean, from the driver's standpoint, I like it the way it is, so I wouldn't really have a suggestion.
With that being said, overall, from day to day, week to week, year to year, what's been the hardest part of competing in the NASCAR series, whether it be, the trucks, nationwide, or the Cup? What's the hardest thing that you've seen?
Well, I guess it's something I've seen firsthand this year, again, going back to racing this 40 car. It's the difference in funding and resources between the teams, I guess. When I was at Roush, you're in a top-notch vehicle every week, and you're pretty much going to have a shot to win every race you go out and run at. Whereas some of the underfunded teams going to the track, they know, a good day for them is going to be a top 10, and that's probably been the hardest thing for me. That's, I don't know, probably one of the things I've seen.
Has that changed, since you came into the sport? I know you talked about you haven't had a ton of experience, even though you've been in the sport since about 2006. And we just talked about the evolution of the sport. Do you think that's changed from when you got into the sport to today? The hardest part of being in NASCAR?
I think so. Yeah. Especially again going back to the sponsorship dollars being harder to find. The teams that have the money, they have it and they have the resources, and the teams that don't now. Definitely makes it a lot harder for them, especially with the transition to this newer car for the nationwide stuff. The Cup guys obviously been running the COT since 2007, so they already had a lot of the technology and information to make those cars go fast on the Cup side. Well, now we've got it on the nationwide side, and it's the same car, the same chassis, but we have a different body on them. So the Cup teams already had the information, so I think it definitely distances themselves and kind of makes them better just because they already had all that information, as opposed to the smaller teams that had to purchase these cars from these guys and make them nationwide cars, and we don't really have any notes to go off of with this new car. So I almost feel like the disparity between the Cup teams and the smaller teams got larger when we went to the newer car. We've definitely been playing catch up.
Talking with NASCAR nationwide driver for the Motorsport Group, Erik Darnell, joining us this morning on the front stretch. Thanks again, Erik, for taking the time out of your day. Let's talk about 2013. I know we've still got a few races left in 2012, but what are your plans as far as 2013 goes? Do you have something in place for the Motorsport Group and signing back on, or are you kind of exploring your options with the new organization?
Well, as of right now, I honestly don't know. Unless you're a Dale Earnhardt Jr. or a Jeff Gordon or, one of the higher level Cup guys, I feel like the contract stuff anymore has been a lot more difficult to get as opposed to how it was in the past. And now, as of right now, I don't have anything in place for next year for sure yet. Definitely trying to work on a couple things, but I don't have anything set in stone at this point in time.
Do you find that as a big distraction going into the week? Each and every weekend? I know we're coming into the silly season, so there are guys like Martin Truex Jr. who just signed a new contract, but there's also guys like Joey Logano that don't have a contract, and like you yourself, Erik. Is that distracting, sitting down in the car each and every weekend where you've got that in the back of your mind, where am I going to race in 2013, or is it something you're able to block out?
Well, that's something you always think about, but, on the other hand, you just got to go out every weekend and run the best you can and do the best you can, and, if something happens and I'm not with the Motorsports Group next year, hopefully somebody else is watching as I'm having some good runs out there on the racetrack, and they'll say, hey, that guy's doing a good job. Maybe we can pick him up for some races next year. It's something you try to block out, but you definitely, especially somebody, I feel like you kind of think about it every now and then.
Overall in NASCAR, for whether it be actually any series, clear it back to the, some of the USAC stuff in all of your experience in your lifetime worth of racing. Do you have a favorite track, or you maybe a favorite win, something you might want to highlight on?
Oh, well, I guess there's a few things. As far as favorite track, I absolutely love Darlington. Having had the chance to race there twice now, it's driver's racetrack. We're up against the wall. You basically go, and it's a blast. I enjoy every chance I get to go race there. And I guess the win, the first is always the sweetest, but my last truck win at Michigan, when I beat Johnny Benson to the finish line by about an inch and a half, that was pretty memorable and pretty exciting. And I still get a lot of comments about that one, even to this day.
Yeah, I think that was about a 5/1000th of a win.
Just enough.
Just enough. A layer of paint.
Yes.
Erik, how can people follow you? Do you have a Facebook, Twitter account? How can people stay up to date with Erik Darnell?
Yeah, I've got a Twitter account. It's at Erik Darnell _7. Still pretty new. I don't have a whole lot of followers on it. And then we got a official Facebook page. I wish I could tell you the address, but just search for Erik Darnell in the title bar and you should be able to find it. And then the motorsportsgroup.com is another website where you can find us, and they've got a Facebook page as well.
Now, Erik, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We wish you the best of luck for the rest of the season, and we can't wait to see you out on the track in 2013.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me.
Have a great day and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Erik.
All right, you too.
Bye. Erik Darnell, driver of the number 40, the Motorsport Group nationwide car. Guy's raced Truck Series. He's raced ARCA. He's raced even up into the Cup Series. And he's one of these guys that is just fighting for everything he possibly can. And unfortunately, he's stuck in a situation where, you don't want to talk bad about the Motorsports Group, but they're obviously an underfunded organization that just doesn't have enough sponsorship dollars, enough R&D behind them to be able to compete week in and week out. And yet he's able to keep that car up into the top 10 in most weekends.
We hear a lot of cliche sayings in our lifetime, and there's one that fits Erik perfectly. There's a dark cloud with a silver lining. Right now, Erik, he is an amazing driver, one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. When I met the Motorsports Group at Iowa, I'm not going to lie, just like the dirt track racing, when you go to the dirt tracks, you're going to see that one or two guys in the late models, modifieds, hobby stocks. You're just going, oh boy, these guys are going to get lapped. They don't have the nicest equipment. They don't have the best equipment. And when I went to Iowa and I seen that, I was feeling the same thing. But then when you go out there and you're watching Erik beat up, and I shouldn't say beat up because of her luck, but when he's running better than Danica Patrick, and you look at the organization behind Danica in the Nationwide Series, here's a guy that's taking a $100 bill and he's fighting against, a $100,000 bill.
Yeah.
And he's doing it really, really good. But here's why I say he's a dark cloud with a silver lining. He's a great driver. He is underfunded. He's worthy of a Roush ride or a Joe Gibbs racing ride. But when you take an underfunded team and you're using, and I'm not going to say subpar equipment, but not at the same level as Jimmy Johnson and them guys.
Yeah, they just don't have the R&D to be able to put out the equipment.
But when you take a driver who runs competitively with like a second-tier style equipment team, and then you put him in that top-tier equipment team, well, with what he's had to claw, scratch, fight, dig for in that second-tier team, imagine what he's going to be like when he's in that top-tier team with the good stuff behind him. And I'm telling you, in the Motorsports Group, let me tell you, they may not have the nicest, newest of everything, but you won't find a more professional team out there, whether Erik's with them or not. And vice versa with Erik, you won't find a better driver out there, running in his kind of position. In some ways, I kind of compare him to Kurt Busch. Here's a championship quality driver. He just doesn't have the best equipment under him.
Exactly.
You're
absolutely right. That has been Kurt Busch's issue all season long. It's not the fact that he's not talented. It's not the fact that he can't get it done. It's just simply that his equipment can't keep up with him.
No, and I'm not knocking the Motorsports Group by no means. There's nothing I couldn't come up with anything to run against those guys. But when you see the Motorsports Group beating the likes of Danica Patrick and a lot of the Cup regulars, with second level equipment, that's really impressive.
And let's be fair to Danica, she doesn't have near as much seat time as Erik does.
No.
And Erik's been in the sport since 2006. Danica's been in for I think this is her fourth year in the Nationwide Series. It's her first. Yeah. This is actually her first full-time Nationwide Series run. So it's just something to keep in mind. I am very excited about the future of the Cup Series because you look back at the Nationwide Series and there is a ton of talent back there just waiting to be picked up. And I think Erik's got two things working against him, is that there's a ton of talent to pick from the Nationwide Series, and there's not a lot of sponsorship dollars to be able to put that talent in the seats in the Cup Series. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen in the next couple of years, but we always do wish the best of luck for every driver out there. And Erik, for joining us, we really appreciate it. Again, you can find him on Facebook, you can find him on Twitter, and themotorsportgroup.com. Got to get over to turn 4. We're going to talk with Andrew Koziski in the infield report. This is the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is the Front Stretch on AM 590, brought to you by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome back to the Front Stretch. This is Turn 4, presented by Koziski Auto Parts, online at, you guys do have a website, but it's kind of needs a little bit of work.
Updating.
So instead, just stop by. Do it the old-fashioned way. Come and see the pretty face that is Andrew Koziski at 50th and I Street. You can also give him a call, 731-4592, and you can hear him say,
Koziski Auto Parts, Team PRP, this is Andrew.
There you go. The same voice you hear every Sunday morning right here on this fine program, you can hear it at 50th and I Street at Koziski Auto Parts. Get your experienced salesperson on the phone today and get your part replaced. Quality used parts at a discounted rate that comes with a full lifetime warranty, actually. So you can go and pick yourself up a part for less than it's going to cost you at Napa?
No.
Oh, God, this is going to be a fun last segment. So we've got about 9 minutes left in the show, so we got to wrap her up pretty quickly. This is Turn 4, presented by Koziski Auto Parts, salvaged by Koziski Auto Parts. And before we get to actually breaking down what's going to happen at Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend, I kind of want to step on my soapbox, if you guys don't mind, and go off on a bit of a tangent, because I'm a little bit irritated with NASCAR Nation. Yes, a tangent.
He is a city boy, ain't he?
Yeah.
I'm a little irritated with NASCAR Nation after Bristol Motor Speedway last weekend, and I'm a junkie. I've been listening to Satellite Series Radio and the NASCAR channel, and I've been listening to all the different shows and watching all the different speed channels, and all these people that have been calling up and saying Tony Stewart deserved to be fined. Now, I understand I'm a Tony Stewart fan. I'm a diehard Tony Stewart fan. I love watching him race. I think he's one of the best race car drivers of all time. I don't care what anybody else says. That's what I think. But what he did at Atlanta at Bristol, throwing the helmet, if you think he deserves to be fined, get out of my sport. You're a moron. Because that is what Bruton Smith just spent $1 million renovating that track and fixing it to have happen. That is what this sport has been missing for the last 20-some races, is somebody adding a little bit of something to this sport. All we've had is the 48 team being fined for penalties, somebody cussing, somebody calling out somebody else. We've had really no drama in this sport. It's been just good old boy, oh, gee, God, he wrecked me. I'm sorry. That kind of happens. That's racist. Screw you. Throw a helmet. And that's exactly what Tony did. So if you think he deserves to get fined, penalized, or whatever, get out of my sport. Screw you. I want the Kurt Busches in my sport that are adding a little bit of drama and a little bit of talk. That's what I want.
Amen.
I don't even know what to say to that.
I'm never going to...
I wonder if I can do that at Eagle Raceway, throw a helmet at somebody.
I bet if you did, they'd talk about it.
Well, I almost did at Crawford County.
And we talked about it.
We talked about it.
It just irritates the crap out of me. People think that, NASCAR went back to this boys have at it. Boys have at it. That's what they want. They want to see a little bit of drama. And when they... I'm getting a sign from our guests for this week's Slinging Dirt. What do you really think? I think I censored myself a little bit because there was a few four-letter words that I referred myself to.
I actually couldn't agree with you more. I think, when Tony threw the helmet... Politically correct, no, but it adds emotion to the sport that's been lacking some emotion and drama at times. And I've been a firm believer, even at the dirt track level, if you could go into the pits at Eagle Raceway or ID, well, maybe not all the time, but sometimes if you could hear some of the emotion that comes out of the drivers when we're hot-headed and tempered, the working blue-collar class people of America that come out to support this sport, I think they would connect with this a little bit more.
Exactly. And people like Tony Stewart and Kurt Busch, this sport needs more of. And I'm going to take Kurt Busch to a grain of salt because I've criticized him for some of his antics of threatening a reporter and some of his actions. But the fact is, when he goes off, people listen and they love it. The sport needs less of the Jimmy Johnsons. who is talented out the wazoo. But every press conference is the same thing. Well, Chad Knaus brought me a good team, this 48 Lowe's motor car. Great, that's great. Give me something. Throw a helmet, tell him he's crappy. Give me something. I mean,
I think that was the weakest toss ever.
Oh, my God. Oh, no, it was great.
Oh, it was awesome. I know. Like next year, Sean Manning from Eagle Raceway, the driver of the 52M Sportmon, him and I were laughing about it earlier this week. Next year at Eagle, we are seriously going to do a WWE elbow off the top of one car. We might get fined, but it's going to get the fans involved, and they're going to love it.
That's this sport needs to have great drivers and a little bit of drama because that's what keeps people talking. As much as you think, oh no, it's all about the racing. There needs to be drama in the sport, or there's not butts and seats and there's not ratings on Sunday. And I guarantee you, the next couple of weeks there's going to be some better ratings on TV because they're going to be talking about Tony Stewart and Matt Kenseth getting into that fight, and it's going to drive ratings. It's going to drive ratings just like when Dale Earnhardt Jr. wins because people start tuning in to see him do better.
Yep.
So that's my tangent.
Well, let's throw a helmet at Atlanta.
How about it? Let's do that. Let's talk about Atlanta Motor Speedway. A great track. We've got 2 races left in the chase. Have not been to Atlanta yet this year, and this is going to be a great track. This is one of those tracks that they were talking about it this week that tires fall off quickly. And these are tracks that fall back on the driver's ability because the tires lose their grip after about 8, 9, maybe 10 laps. And you go about 30 laps on a tank of gas. So it's going to fall back on the drivers a lot to be a lot more talented and less on the tires and how much grip they've got. So a lot of these drivers are going to have to fall back on. I think you're going to see this a lot more wrecking. Some drivers just all of a sudden getting loose and putting it in the wall.
Yeah, the only thing I don't want Atlanta Motor Speedway is my favorite track overall outside of Bristol. But with that being said, the only thing I don't like about Atlanta is look at the one organization that seems to own that track every year in and year out.
It's the same people that own Bristol, and they just spent a ton of money redoing Bristol.
Well, no. I was talking about the race organizations. Jimmy Johnson, Chad Knaus, they're going to be at the top of their game there at Atlanta, and that's the only thing. I want to see smoke. I want to see, one of the Busch brothers. I'm a big Busch fan. But Jimmy Johnson, Chad Knaus, Hendricks, they're going to be a top-notch organization at Atlanta, and after a while, you just get tired of seeing the same group run up front everywhere.
And that's what you saw last year at Atlanta. It was Jeff Gordon that took home the win. Jimmy Johnson came home second. Tony Stewart third. Kurt Busch, when he was racing for Penske in the 22, he came home fourth. Carl Edwards got himself a top 5 win. Brad Keselowski sixth. Kevin Harvick seventh. Hamlin eighth. I mean, you're seeing a lot of your typical drivers. Even A.J. Allmendinger, when he was driving for the 43, got himself a top 10. I don't think he's going to get one this weekend.
How big is this race for Carl Edwards, though?
Who's the guys outside the chase right now, Dan? Who's in right now? Casey Kane and Kyle Busch, but I think Kyle Busch only has 1 win, right?
Correct.
There's a lot of people with only 1 win.
Kyle is the last person on the bubble to be able to win. So let's see. Right behind him, though, is Ryan Newman. He is just 3 points behind. Excuse me. He's not 3 points behind. He's 20-some points behind, 19 points behind Kyle Busch. So a bad day for Kyle Busch, which I think we've seen that 18 car. He can have a bad day, and he's out of the chase. So this wild card has got to be the best thing that's happened in NASCAR.
It's so much fun.
I think it's funner to watch the wild card race than it is the top 10 in points.
That's the exact reason why they implemented this in the first place, is because during August and September, during July and August, there was really not much to talk about. Essentially, the top 10 was locked. You're in there. I mean, Tony Stewart's had a horrible last 3 races, and he's still in the chase, but he has one more bad race. He's 16 points above 11th place. He can still use his bonus points to start the chase, but if he has another bad race, he's out of the top 10, and he's got to use those bonus points to get in. So there is so much storyline in this that Tony Stewart can make it, Casey Kane can make it. I don't think Carl Edwards, who's sitting 12th in the points, he just can't do it. He's going to have to go back-to-back wins in order to do this. Jeff Gordon's still got a chance. Kyle Busch, Ryan Newman, Marcus Ambrose has got a chance. I mean, it's just this wild card has been the best thing to happen to NASCAR since the double file restarts.
Yep.
I think they've always used double file restarts.
No.
Oh, really?
No, it's been about 10 years, I believe. They used to do.
That's right.
They used to do leaders on the inside, lap cars on the outside.
Yep.
So essentially, yes, they always did do double foul restarts, but it was lap cars on the outside, and it always caused some serious issues. So, well, this has been the front stretch. Thank you so much for joining us. Turn 4, presented by Koziski Auto Parts, 50th and I Street. Give them a call today, 731-4592. If you need to get yourself a quality replacement part, give them a call today, Koziski Auto Parts. Next week, we're going to sit down with, well, we're still undetermined. We're going to try to get Buddy Ray Jones on the phone and see if he can give us a update from Boone, as we're going to be live next weekend. We want to say thank you so much to our guest, Erik Darnell, for sitting down with us earlier in the week and talking about his season at the Motorsports Group in that 40 car for Nationwide Race and all of his plans for the future. And we thank you for sitting down with us this morning and listening to us banter and go on and on and on. And if you want to give your opinion about maybe my tangent, head over to the Facebook page and let me know what you think. Because if you're not a Tony Stewart fan, I don't like you.
Wow.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.